Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding, and wherever you are tuning in today, we are so glad to have you. And this show is all about celebrating those that step out, rise above challenges, lead with purpose, and create success on their terms. And so let's talk about burnout because I think that's a big thing. It isn't just about being tired. It's a signal that something deeper needs to change. And my guest today not only understands that truth, she's built a mission around it. After walking through her own health and wellness transformation, she's helping others take back control of their energy, clarity, and purpose. And so, how can you go wrong talking about those things, right? We all want to be better at eliminating the burnout and hopefully not having to deal with it. So before we welcome her on, we do want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine.
All right. And with that, we do want to make a mention to head on over to startergirlz.com. And over there, you can catch up on any episode that you missed. There are a lot of them. I just recently, the other day, noticed we have like 600 videos over there on that platform. So you could be in there for a while if you wanted to. The other good thing is you can sign up for our community newsletter and keep up with anything that's going out, community news, of course, and then all future episodes where you'll never miss one. And then, of course, if you are an entrepreneur or maybe you just want to know this, I do have a 2-minute free quiz over there where you can find out what may be your number one success block that is keeping you stuck in place right now. It's free. Take you 2 minutes. It's fun. And you might learn something new about yourself. So head on over to startergirlz.com. And as I always say, take care of business. All right, it's time to welcome our guest on the show today. So Lisa Hammett, a transformational keynote and TEDx speaker, international bestselling author, positive intelligence certified coach, and wellness expert is joining us today. With 26 years of leadership experience in the high pressure world of corporate retail, Lisa knows the cost of burnout. And she's on a mission to end it, especially for professionals in healthcare and HR. After losing 65 pounds and reclaiming her own well-being, Lisa left corporate to empower others to take charge of their health, mentally, physically, and emotionally. She's helped thousands create sustainable lifestyle shifts and is the author of From Burnout to Best Life, a global bestseller in 16 categories. And so, Lisa, I am so excited to chat with you. You got so many happening things happen. So welcome to the Starter Girls Show.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be fun. I'm so
It
excited.
is.
And I always love my TEDx speakers because they're just good. You know, there's nothing more like when you do a podcast. I mean, I think, I always say my objective, I have like really two main objectives when I do this show. One is to make sure my guests always have a great time. I like my guests to leave and be like, man, that was a fun podcast. So, and I like my audience to be inspired and motivated to create change, right? And so I think that's the cool thing about this show is that we get to do that, but I love my TEDx speakers because I think the other part of that is we have to have good conversation. And so I think that should be
Yes,
my third thing is that we need really good conversation, right?
absolutely.
That is
Because
going to be fun. So let's talk about Lisa because you've had, for our audience real quick, Lisa and I got to meet outside of the show. So I got to learn a little bit about her journey and we have a lot of parallels, different things, but some parallels here. And so yours kind of started out in this wellness journey, like healing yourself and getting healthy. And then you've taken that into now a space where you're working kind of in the corporate sector, in the HR departments and in the wellness departments, which I think is so huge. So I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit about this journey, this segue, like what led to this and got you here.
absolutely. So, quick story, as you had mentioned, Jennifer, I spent 26 years in corporate retail and I reached burnout and I ignored the warning sign. and, let my health just completely deteriorate, emotional and physical. I gained weight. I was depressed. I almost lost my marriage as a result. And in a moment of desperation, I just quit my job without an exit strategy, which I highly recommend that you do not do because it resulted in bankruptcy down the road.
Yeah.
But I share all that with you to say because now, because I have the resources that I do, I could have prevented it. And I really am passionate about helping people not go through what I went through, basically. So, yeah, my first priority on leaving was losing the weight, and I did that. And then I became a wellness coach, and I did that for, oh gosh, over 11 years. And then, fast forward, there's the pandemic, and people are coming to me that gained weight, they're stressed, they're burned out. And I realized I needed a lot more resources to be able to support these people. So I leaned into obviously my trainings, but also I discovered positive intelligence. And that is what I'm certified in. And I really discovered that it is an excellent resource to, mitigate stress and other negative emotions in the moment. So I became a certified coach. I went through my life coaching credentials. So that's kind of what brought me to where I am today. And I just kind of fell into the industry, the healthcare and HR industry, because they really resonated with my burnout story. Because
Yeah.
although I was in a different industry, they have, similar stressors and it's just ongoing all the time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to kind of, I guess, maybe piggyback on what you were saying. I mean, you mentioned, not knowing this, walking away from the job and then having the bankruptcy and not knowing this, like you did recommend this, you would have done differently. But I think that's how this goes, right? I mean, we
yes.
all agree you wouldn't know the information you today had you not gone through the experience, right? And so I think that's what makes this story so powerful. I love stories. I'm always a sucker for stories. And I think because when there's, two people do two things. They either have a bad thing happen and they do nothing with it. They fall back into it or they allow it to happen again, or maybe they learn, but they do nothing with it. And then there's the people that get that, have a bad experience and they learn from the experience and they make some kind of transformational change. But I just got off. The episode I recorded before yours, we were talking about curiosity and chaos, right? And chaos comes before transformation, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's where we were kind of talking about this whole idea about leading with curiosity. And I had another person I interviewed not too long ago that kind of said the same thing about leading with curiosity, right? So when you have like that chaos happen, what do you do with that chaos? Do you lead with curiosity or do you do nothing? And, if you're leading with this
Yeah.
curiosity, you're coming from a place of how can I do different? How can I show up differently? How did I cause this? What was my role in this? Like you're leading with this what is to be taken from all of this, the
Mhm.
extraction of this. So I say all that to say that, basically to commend you because I don't think that, we have to have all that to get where we are today, right? In that
100%.
so I love it. I do want to ask you, because we talked about this positive, what was it called? Positive psychology or
Positive intelligence, which
positive
is,
intelligence. Okay. Because
yeah.
there is a positive psychology. That's why I keep thinking that, because that's a whole other thing. This positive intelligence. I don't want you to tell us everything because obviously that's why you do your workshops and people work with you. But maybe give us just a little, so our audience is kind of, what is this whole positive intelligence thing she's talking about? Just give them maybe a little quick brief overview of that.
Well, I'm going to tie it into what you just said about the leading with curiosity
Yeah.
because that describes the sage power.
Yep.
So, in a nutshell, we have two sides of our brain. We have our left brain, analytical brain, designed for problem solving, but it also generates all that mind trash and that garbage and,
Yeah.
stress, shame, blame, everything. And then our right brain, our sage brain, that's our positive brain. And when we're swimming in that space, we're curious. We're able to handle challenges with ease. We don't become the victim in it. We can see the big picture and we're just better equipped to lead and also to just go through life, with ease. And I'm not saying that challenges go away by any
Right.
means. They don't. They'll always be there. So, developing positive intelligence and mental fitness is a key component of that. It is recognizing all that negative mind trash, that garbage that is fueling our behavior in very dysfunctional ways. And oftentimes we're not even aware of it because it comes up from our subconscious.
Right.
And it's being able to kind of quiet those negative emotions because they don't always completely go away, but you're able to manage them. So you can shift to that positive stage perspective. So you can lead with empathy, you can respond with empathy, you can be curious, you can be happy, you can be healthy, fulfilled. So there's different techniques that we can do. So, people say, well, what's different? Because we call it PQ.
Yeah.
And so how is PQ different from EQ? I've
Right.
heard of EQ. Well, there are similarities to it, but the big difference with positive intelligence is that it's an operating system and it can be applied to different areas of
Yes.
life. So
Yes.
it can be leadership, it can be family development, it can be relationships, it can be just your overall health and well-being. And it's built on developing these mental fitness habits that stay with you through
Mhm.
life. So, because we talked about this when we got together, Jennifer.
Yes.
You go to these conferences or you go to
Right.
these trainings, and you're just enveloped with all this amazing information, and you're like, wow, this is great. And then you leave and you get
Yep.
back into your life, and you're like, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, you remember what do you do with it, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you don't remember. You remember maybe one thing, right? Right?
100%. So,
Yeah.
positive intelligence gives you the resources to make this a lifelong application, which is great.
I love this. And you know what? You know what's so great is like I've had 2 conversations with 2 different people today, and I love it because it's like one was very like I don't even know how to like the words that I want to put it like picturesque, emotional.
Yeah.
And it's similar. We're having similar conversations, but different conversations. Do you know what I mean? Like
Uh-huh.
this
I
is a
do.
very analytical and practical, like step conversation where this was more picturesque. And I don't know how the word I'm looking for. I'm gonna have to go find the word. They're almost like the same things, but they're different, you know? And so interestingly that you say this because I think I shared this with you when I was going through and trying to like, because I would go networking and I would have these people be like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm a success architect because really what I do is I help make people make transformation that sticks. But I couldn't isolate what exactly what I was I doing. I knew in my mind what I was doing. I had to put a system together like you're talking about. I had to actually get some kind of a system so that I could say, okay, I have a 4-step system now that can help me that I believe can help people make transformation stick because it's what I do. It's what I do. It's nothing magic, but it's all the resources I pulled together and I've developed this out and figured out, okay, these are the things that I know in my mind that have helped me create change. And it's things like understanding like your value system, your strengths and your weakness. I mean, there's these things that we have to work through. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's what you're talking about. Like I would go and I'd hear all these things and I'm like, okay, that's great. One person over here is talking about core values and why you need to know that. One person's over here talking about Myers-Briggs and strength finders. Okay, you need to know that. One person's over here talking about the 5 stages of adult development, which you need to know that. And I'm like, okay, I to pull this together in a formula because I know all this and you can't give that's too much. And most people are not going to do all that work. So then
Right.
I had to kind of bring that into, okay, so what if we put this formula, like you're talking about these techniques or steps together that they can work through. And you're like, okay, this is now easy to understand. We have 4 things we're thinking about. All of these things, these modality things are in there, but we have these 4 basic things we're thinking about, and it becomes more practical and more memorable for people and easier to apply in their day to
100%.
day. Right.
Yeah, because you have
So,
these pillars. There are 4
yeah.
pillars, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I say I know when I talked to you, we had these similarities in the kind of the work we're doing. But I love that you're certified in the positive intelligence because I think that this is so important. And it's not just about in the workplace, right? It's really, I mean, it affects your entire life. It's how you show up in all of the relationships you navigate.
100%. Because, yes, you might spend the most time at work, but if work is really toxic and dysfunctional and you're having issues in work, that's going to bleed into your personal life and
Yeah.
vice versa. If you're having issues at home, relationship challenges, or a loved one, is going through cancer, God forbid, or just something, all that stress, that worry, that's going to bleed into work and impact your work performance. So they're all intertwined. And you can't just say, okay, I'm just going to put up this solid wall. And
Right.
when I step inside the office, I will never have an emotional thought about my personal life. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and there was a time when we kind of, had this whole idea that work and home life were, keep your problems at home. And I mean, to some degree, you've got to have the emotional
Yes.
intelligence to be able to walk into a place and not let that dominate. That's what we just said, right?
Right.
But really, it's affecting you on a nervous system level. I mean, whatever's
Yes.
going on here is affecting you, and it's changing the way you are operating, either physically or it's coming out in your it's one way or another. It's showing up, and so I think this whole idea of learning to understand, I think that the importance of why you need to know this and learning ways to get better at that. Right? It's not just about the words that are coming out of your mouth. It's a physical manifestation. Like I've often said, like a lot of my I say craziness when I'm in the chaos, it will manifest into my health. It will show up in
Oh,
that
yeah.
way. And when your health, then it starts messing with the head, and you've got a lot of things going on. And so this stuff is so important on so many levels, and I think what you're doing is awesome. I love that you're going into the corporate sector, because I don't know if they talk about this stuff as much, and so
Yeah, I mean, a lot of organizations don't. Some are getting pretty good at it, and they have a wellness component. But then there's other organizations that say that they do have this wellness component, but then they never allow their workers to have the time to utilize the resources that they provide them.
Mm,
So there's
yeah.
there's a lot, and with the whole mandates of having to go back in the office.
Yeah.
This has really created a lot of issue for people, because a number of the individuals who are being mandated to go back in the office were never hired to be in an
Oh.
office environment. They were going to
Oh.
work from home. So
Yeah.
obviously, the ones who used to be in an office, they might not like the idea of going back, but hey, that's how they were hired.
They were
So
hired that way.
deal with it. And if you don't like that anymore, then go find something that's 100% virtual or hybrid. But there is such a vast majority of people that were not hired for that. And then, they're not compensated for travel, because obviously, there's a commute involved.
Right.
Rarely do people live within 5 minutes of where they work.
Right.
It's limiting. And then there's the wardrobe. There's the wear and tear on the vehicle. I mean, and they're not compensated for that. And if you have kids, I mean, you can't forget the kids. What do you do? If you have smaller children. So it's a big problem. It really
Yeah.
is. And, one of the biggest benefits in the corporate sector is when they can allow that flexibility. And it's just been blown up now with, so many mandates coming from Washington. It's just
Yeah.
a mess.
I think people get, one of the things we were talking about today and the previous is really about, looking at change and asking the question, do we need to make change, right? Like, do we need to bring about some change and looking at the larger grand picture of things instead of
Yes.
being hung on or clinging to, we've always done it this way. So why would we change? I think the smarter we get, the more knowledge we get, the more we evolve, and we should be open to saying, maybe we need to do things a little bit differently. Maybe we need to give
Yes.
them more time to pour into their wellness. And because then they're going to show up happier and they're going to be more productive. I mean, I like at the very fundamental, I'll tell you this. When I was in college, I worked for an insurance agent. And I remember coming in. So I was going to school full time. And then I would go in like 3 days a week. I'd go in after like from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And then on the opposing days, I'd go in from 8 to 5. On the days that I would show up for 1 to 5, I would be like, Lisa, we jamming, man. I had 4 hours to get that work done, crank it out. And on the days that I had to be there from 8 to 5, it was like, give me a break. Like
Yeah.
I was like poking, because I was just more effective in that short time. And I'm not advocating that we need to do that with everybody, but I think the thing I'm trying to say is that sometimes we have to look at systems and the way we're doing something and say, maybe this isn't working. Maybe, we need to assess it, but also, if we get into just go back to what I was saying, like strengths and weaknesses, also recognizing that the people that we're working with, how they thrive, because some people
100%.
like me who are high energy can get a lot done in a very short amount of time. Whereas I'm going to get bored very easily. And if you tried to, like, I would die if right now, if I had to go back to sit at a desk all day. And I'm not begrudging anybody because I
Yeah.
recognize we have to do the things we have to do. But oh my gosh, Lisa, if I had to sit at a desk all day
Mhm.
and be on a phone and type and have to sit at that desk, I think I'd go nuts. I would be like, man, I am going to need like some music in here, some like,
100%. Oh, I'm 100% the same way. And I mean, I like people and I enjoy what I like about the work that we do is that
yeah,
it's diversive. So, we go out and we speak or we coach
right.
or, so some of it is virtual,
Yep.
obviously, but
Yep.
we dictate that. We have control over them. We're not mandated to just sit for 8 hours at a
Right.
time. And I would just die.
Yeah.
I couldn't go back to them. I couldn't.
Yeah,
I
I
would
think it really
I
comes
would
to
die.
back to, yeah, your values and then where your strengths are, right? Like, I
100%.
mean, could we sit in a chair all day? Yes, we could sit in a chair all day. If we knew that we had to
Physically,
do it,
yes.
we could do it. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
we're going to be happy doing it,
exactly,
you know?
exactly. And I mean, I believe that we were given certain strengths,
Yes.
and it's our ability as we go through life to really understand what those strengths are, and what we're passionate about. Ties into the whole core values thing. And
Mhm.
then we align that with what we're doing.
Yeah,
And when all of those are in alignment, then that is when we're really showing up as our best self. We're leading in the right way and we're attracting the right people and we're serving, truly
absolutely.
in how we were meant to serve.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I agree with you. I think
yeah.
it's important. That's why I had to put all those pillars together because it was like,
Yeah.
what is it that, like when you're trying to figure this out, like, cause it's not just one thing. It's not just get up and implement healthy habits. Wherever your people come in the door is where they come in. And both you and we entered this segue in a health place from a health perspective. Both of us
Hmm.
had some kind of crisis going on that put us at the forefront of taking a moment to pause about how we were showing up. Like, how were we affecting our health? Like, what was actually causing this? And that kind of spawned the curiosity into a deeper, how are we showing up and how are we leading and how is that making a difference in the world around us? And so, yeah, I think when you start to do that and get into those places where you're asking those questions and like you say, get into your purpose and and you're not going to do that unless you start asking questions. You're never going to figure that out unless
100%.
you start getting curious. And I think, it goes so much to say when we talk about like this curiosity thing that sometimes we get so set in this idea of what we think we should be doing and how we should be, moving about. And we're unhappy because that's the should that's not aligning with the values and the strengths. It's just, I think I should be doing this because everybody else, I guess, is doing that, or that's what maybe mom and dad told us, or that's what the education told us, or whatever that is.
Hmm.
So I'm
That's
with you
setting
on that.
yourself up. Yeah, that's setting yourself up for failure, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Trying to
absolutely.
conform to something. Yeah.
Yeah,
And really to find your purpose and your why, it's a little uncomfortable at first because
yeah.
you got to ask yourself some tough questions. And, I'm not saying don't do it. Absolutely do it. But you have to take stock of where are you right now? And to really get to where you want to be, it's scary
Yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes you
And
just gotta get mad.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I wanna know, and this is gonna be a no-brainer, really a no-brainer question for you, but I think people that listening to this, they look at you and me and these people that I bring on here and they think, "Well, you guys just got it all figured out because 'cause you're there." We're like, "No, we didn't. We've had to, like, kind of evolve to that place," right?
Yes.
But maybe as, moving from, you were in retail and in this corporate sector for a really long time. Now me, I wasn't in the corporate as long. I've been out kind of doing my thing for a long time. But somebody coming from that space into this, now I'm on my own. You worked through the whole bankruptcy thing, you did the health challenge. What were maybe some of the I guess lessons you had to learn in that transition from corporate to entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, it ties back to, what we were just saying about what are you passionate about, your core values, kind of thing, so that you can kind of move into something that better serves you and fulfills you as well. But I'll be honest, it was a lot of self development. I mean, I by the time I had reached burnout, I was so negative. I was that toxic,
Mm,
negative person that you can't stand to be around
yeah.
because I was so miserable. And that's what
Right.
almost broke up my marriage.
Mm,
And, you can't expect to get anything positive in life if you're swimming in negativity.
right.
I mean, you have to shift your mindset. And I think that is really the number one thing that needs to shift when you're making that kind of evolution. Because when you have that kind of mindset, everything else kind of falls into place. I mean, you start eating better, you start
Right.
moving your body better. You show up as a much better person and you get curious, and it all ties into what's in your head. And I know for a
Yeah.
lot of people that sounds really woo woo, but it's the
That's
truth. I
true.
mean, and I use
Yeah.
this example all the time. It's like, how do professional athletes, how do they win medals? How do
Right.
they win trophies? It's because they have this vision in their head of what it's going to be like to win that, or, what they aspire most in life. And you have to have that solid vision to kind of lead you. And then, your goals and action steps, that's kind of, what keeps you going. But the compass, it's really that vision, big
Yeah.
vision. So you have to develop that.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, being around the negative person. I think there's, the negative from being burnt out. And I think that's
Yes.
a good indicator that you're in burnout stage. But I think a lot of people don't really recognize that, right? Because it's not an overnight, it's a gradual process. I mean, you
Yes.
might be this happy person, and then all of a sudden you get to that place where like you're just negative all the time and you don't even really realize it, right? You don't even realize you've made that transformation because been a gradual progression to a burnout. And then by the time you get to
100%.
that, and I feel like all of us experience at some time or another that little bit of burnout where we're just like, I'm just done. And I'm like,
Hmm.
you can't, like you just, and everybody handles it different. Like in your case, people walk away, they freeze, they all do differently with
Hmm.
that. But I think it's so important to recognize that, because I will tell you, and you're probably like me, there's nothing worse like where we are to be around somebody that's negative like that. Oh my goodness, you just want to go
Yes.
nuts because you're just like everything is spiraling for you. And if you just could change the
Yeah.
way you're looking just a little bit, everything would, it would shift. Everything would look differently, but it's so hard because when
It is.
you're in it and you have to recognize it to get out of it. You
A
know what I
hundred
mean?
percent. Oh, 100%. And then when you do get out of it and you want to achieve what you want most in life, you really have to protect your energy. And if you're around people that suck the life out of you, you're not going to get what you want. You're going to be miserable. You're going to go back down that rabbit hole. So it's really aligning yourself with those individuals that are energy givers, not energy drainers.
Yeah. We used to
Yeah.
say, and in Mary Kay, when we would bring people in our unit, it wasn't that we didn't like the consultants talking to each other, but we would always say, like, if you were going through something, talk to your upline because they were in a position where they could pour into. Because a lot of times the consultants would be like, they're like, girl, you got oh, I got a problem. And then they just go back and forth feeding on that energy, right? But if
Yep.
you would go to somebody like you're talking about that's in a position and equipped to actually help you work out of that, they're going to be skilled enough to get you out of that and not keep that loop going of negativity, right? So I have a
100%.
great friend here here locally. She's the one that we're starting the networking. She's really good at redirecting. Which,
Yeah.
and because both of us, she's been in Mary Kay 30 years. I was in 22, so we kind of know these little hacks. But she is so gifted at redirecting people. I think that's one of her best. Like, she's a great friend, anyways. But I just think that's a really good skill that she's developed. Because when you're in those situations and you've got that going on, how as a leader do you navigate that and move that conversation so that we get out of that, out of that loop, right? And right now I'm sitting here thinking about the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
We don't brought to mind. I'm going to say when you were saying that is, think of those meetings,
Yeah.
that you're going into, whether you're the leader or maybe it was before you actually became the leader, and
Right.
it just turns into this toxic down this rabbit hole because one person brings up something instead of thinking something constructively and sticking to the agenda. They go off on this rabbit hole tangent And then it just, everybody in that room, it just is this toxic spiral, and you leave and you're like, what the heck happened?
I was gonna say, you and I are the ones over there going, really? Like, seriously, is this happening right now? Like that, I have been in those meetings and I've been like,
I
"Oh,
know.
like, I seriously can't take it. I will, I'm not very good at hiding like my facial, so if I'm getting disgusted, I'm gonna be like, I gotta get up. Like, I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom or go make a phone call or something because I
Yeah.
can't sit in this energy. Like, I just cannot stand. And you know what's interesting, Lisa, is like you mentioned, you being negative. I've been that way too. Like, I'm not gonna,
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like we've all kind of I mean, maybe there are some people that are fortunate enough that they don't, but I think most of us experience those kinds of things. And I think we're humans. And so there are times that we're negative, but I think there's a difference between being a negative occasionally and just being negative most times. And so
100%.
I think it really comes back to being conscientious about who we are, how we show up, and also, you know, when we're like that, how we're affecting other people. Because when I think you start, I talk a lot about this. When I worked with this mentor, this whole subject object shift, right? When you start recognizing that you are controlling, I like to use kind of this idea of a game controller, like you're the character in a game, right? Now, if you're looking on the outside in, you're controlling your character. Your character is going to navigate the outcome of the game. So it's also going to navigate what's going on around you. So it may
Mhm.
not directly influence everybody's move, but you're having an impact on everybody you come in contact with. And so if you're showing up and excuse my French, you're being an ass, you're
Yeah.
affecting those people negatively, right? Like you're impacting their
100%.
day. So we have to be conscientious of how we show up. And this goes back to what you're talking about, this positive intelligence. Being aware of how you're behaving.
It does. In speaking engagements, when I'm talking about, we call them saboteur traits, and they're like controller, stickler, the perfectionist, what have you. But there's one that is called the hypervigilant. And the hypervigilant is the person that is very self aware, which is good if you're anticipating danger. So if you're a first responder, paramedic, that's a great thing. But it goes to the extreme, and it's that person that is always paranoid that something bad's going to happen. And I use the example that, how do you feel when you're around somebody who is always paranoid that something bad's going to
Oh
happen?
gosh.
And it's just constantly out of their mouth.
Yeah.
And they're like nervous, anxious, irritated, want to smack them. I'm like, absolutely. And that exactly. And that is exactly what you're talking about, of how we call it a saboteur contagion, where it's somebody's emotions, their saboteurs are infecting somebody else. And that's how we influence behavior in very negative ways. But when we show up very positively and we lead with curiosity and empathy and clear headed focus, and we can see the big picture, showing up as our best self, that also transfers to other people.
Yeah, I
So,
know. I agree with you, and it's much better. I feel like when you have the warm, fuzzy energy going on, it's much happier.
so much better.
I'm thinking about we had these little pink these things that my kids at one time. I don't know. I must have ordered them for Mary Kay. They were those little pink fuzz balls. They had the little eyes on these little. My kids. I don't know which one of my kids went around and put them all over our house. They were like all over these little pink things, and a little reminder to be happy, kind of thing. But yeah, I agree with you, and I love what you're doing. I think all of this is so important. So you have a book, right? Did I get that right? Did I say that at the beginning? Because my brain,
Yes.
like it's getting on the hunger mode now, so it's going a little stupid.
You love it. And my second book, which is the sequel to it, is coming out next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Super
the first
excited.
one's about burnout. What's this one going to be around?
Well, they're both.
Okay.
So it's the first one. The series is from burnout to best life.
Okay.
And this one was really developing healthy habits. So I had a section on mindset and what you put in your body, how you move your body,
Sure.
sleep, it's more holistic wellness, that kind of
Yep.
thing. And then this one really takes a deep dive into mindset and positive intelligence, because at the time that I wrote the first book, it was already being edited when I was getting certified in positive intelligence. So
Okay.
it didn't include any of that. So this one is all about, diving into that positive intelligence and how it impacts you in the workplace, if you're a leader, how you show up if you're looking for a job, because that is such
Right.
a big thing right now. And just, how you navigate life in general and how it impacts your relationships and just what you want in
I
life.
love it. I love it. And you know what? I think it's just so interesting, the parallels in our lives with I guess our entry into this, because my book that I wrote, I only wrote one. I don't know if I want to write another one right now. That's not on my calling list right now, because it's just not that it was hard, it's just time consuming.
It
But
is
my
very
first
time
one was
consuming.
really a lot about the wellness side of things, because that was sort of the entryway. I think I started to get into like affirmation, but since then, I mean, I got my neurological fitness training done, certified in that, and really got into more stuff. And I was working with a mentor for a while and studied, I think it's Robert Kramer, The Five Stages of Adult Development. And I don't know why we thought, like, I don't even know why I thought this never even existed, but I
Mhm,
wasn't really, I guess, in the place of understanding like emotional intelligence and like we're talking about the
mhm,
EQ, all of that stuff. And when I studied that, I, went through that, and for anybody listening to that, go look it up, because it's actually interesting. You adults have stages of development. They do.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
once you go through those, you will start pinpointing people that that fall into each of those categories. The funny thing is we tend to navigate, like if you go to the top one, obviously these are going to be our leaders on the top, but they go all the way down to like the self-centered person who is basically just completely, they're like a 17-year-old child, like they're
Yeah.
completely oblivious to the world around them. But if you think about this, talk about from a health perspective, this mentor that I worked with talked about how we might be, say we're up at this higher level, but then we've been saying throughout this, you go into a meeting or you go home to family, and all of a sudden you got to jump down now to this level. You're operating mostly at this level, but now you come to this level. And he was even getting back to why you think about like us being not well, like
Mhm,
physically ill, because
mhm.
we're bouncing around between these different levels. And so I often joke about this. I love my parents, but man, I tell you, it is chaotic it's not as bad now. I feel like it's better now, but there for a while, I go back to visit. And Lisa, I tell you, like, I didn't even realize this, but I would get so internally worked up and I didn't even know this was going on. On the ride home, I would always come home with a migraine.
Oh,
On the
wow.
way back, I would get a migraine. And I think it was
Wow.
because I had worked myself up so much going,
Yeah.
because it wasn't that anybody was going to do anything bad. We just would always get into these like dumb arguments, or it just would be chaotic. And I think in my mind, and I will tell you, like I don't get the migraines so much anymore, but the same thing here now when I get into situations where I feel like there's going to be toxicity, or
Mhm.
because to me, that chaos is a lot of toxicity is attached to it.
Oh,
There's a lot. Yeah.
100%.
I
Yeah.
will start getting internally, I will have things I have to really work at my nervous system stuff, and really work at my
Mhm.
habits and my
Yep.
protective measures to make sure that I keep myself in check, because if I don't, then it will manifest into health stuff. Like I will just
Oh, yeah.
have, yeah, weird
Oh,
things will
yeah.
happen,
I'm the same way. I mean, that's your
So,
body's reaction to stress, and
yeah.
mine is always, like, stomach related. That's always
Mhm.
so fun.
Yeah.
And it was funny because my GI doctor said, "Well, you manifest the people who have migraine, you're basically having a migraine in your
In your
stomach."
stomach. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's really interesting," but everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some could be sciatica issues that you think, "Oh, no,
Right.
that would be something else." No, your body can manifest whatever it wants when stress is,
Yeah, or it'll
you
make it
know,
hurt worse, that's for sure. If you've got sciatica, it can
100%.
make it hurt. I have sciatica, so I know I get it,
Yeah.
but it always flares up. It always
Yeah.
like right now it's fine. I'm not knowing, but I will tell you it will flare up when
No.
there's a lot of just and it's emotional chaos, right? Emotional
100%.
chaos that weighs on you. So
Yeah.
this is good. This is good food for thought. And so I'd love to know, for anybody listening to this, like, what is it? Because you wrote this in your first book, these habits. So maybe let's
Uh-huh.
backpedal to one of those. Maybe like something that if somebody's starting to feel, we've talked a lot about, we talked about making sure you're around the right people, right? But
Mhm.
maybe something that somebody, if they're starting to recognize the signs that they're traveling down that burnout trail, what is something they can maybe do to help them in this right now? Like something like a step, something they could do.
Get help. I mean, they
Good.
do. I'm not saying that you have to admit yourself to, uh,
Yeah, to the hospital
so,
or whatever, right.
seek help, and that could be
Good.
support through a mentor, I don't recommend family members, and
Yeah.
it's not to say that family isn't a great dynamic in a lot of cases, but they're not always objective. And you need somebody who is objective. So it could be a
I
counselor, it
agree.
could be a coach, it could be a therapist. And, for a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't want to spend money on coaching or whatever. And like, okay, start with something that your health insurance will pay for.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody or, a close confidant that you have had in your life. If you have a pastor that you feel comfortable talking to, talk to somebody who is objective because that individual is going to give a different perspective. Because when you're stuck in the weeds in it, all
Yeah.
you're doing is fixating in that misery. And
Right.
you can't like zoom out to really see what the issue is. And an objective person can. And I mean, coaching is great, but I recognize that that's a scary step for a lot of people initially. So, just talk to somebody.
I think that's great advice. I agree with you. And I think, yes, family's not the best when it comes to that. I would not argue with you on any of that. So I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great, Lisa. I love what you're doing. And I think it's much needed work. Anybody listening to this may want to catch up with you, might want to find your book. They might want to follow you. They might want to reach out, see what you've got going on. Where do we want to send them?
To my website, and my name is up here. It's
Okay.
basically lisahammett.com.
Easy.
Really difficult.
We'll make sure in the show notes we get it in there
Yeah.
so they know where to find you. And that way, if anybody wants to connect, it's been so much fun. I appreciate
But
you.
that's
And
good.
yeah, and thanks for the
Yes.
time and all the little knowledge nuggets that we pour in. Hopefully somebody right now, I'm sure somebody may be listening to this, if they're in that
Yeah.
phase right now, maybe it'll encourage them to just pause and say, hey, I need to do something differently, whether that is to go seek help or, find a book, I don't know, a resource, whatever you need
Yes.
to maybe get you in that right, make that step to go to a different direction. Right.
100%. 100%. Well, thank you. This has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been fun. All right.
Okay.
Of course, to our audience, we appreciate you and we hope you find this episode, both informative and inspiring. And if you did, you know what to do. Hit the like, the subscribe, comment, share, do all the things so we can keep sharing all of this fabulous content. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you must start, and every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.